on this week's Practical Pro Musician, I'm going to tell you something that I don't think I've ever shared on the podcast or in any other public forum before. It's what I did right after I got fired from my dream gig, and I can't believe I keep forgetting about this story, but I got offered this really weird job that changed my life in a way that you may not expect, but I can't wait to tell you all about it. Stay tuned. We love playing music, but it seems like the odds of making a living as a professional musician are about as high as winning the lottery. So the big question is this: how do musicians like us, with jobs, families, and responsibilities, get from where we are today to making a practical living playing music we love? Well, my name is Daniel Hadaway, and this show will give you the answers. This is the Practical Pro Musician. Well, hey there again, my friend. Welcome back to another extravagant, exciting, exhilarating, enlightening. I'm trying to think of more words that begin with E. All of those things. Welcome to another episode of... Hey, that began with the letter E also. Episode. Anyway, welcome back to the Practical Pro Musician. My name's Daniel, and I am so happy you are with me right now, today, tonight, this morning, wherever you are, whenever you are. I'm happy that we've got this time together, you and me. Hey, I want to first off apologize because if you're listening to this show in real time, I did not put an episode up last week, and that was because, as I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing, we finally moved out of the house that we had sold, and we moved into a rental house that we're in for a few months while we finish building the other house that we're building. So I'm going to do my best, by the way, to not mention moving or anything to do with the house for at least a little while. That's behind me. It's kind of out of my mind, the moving part at least. I mean, as I'm recording this, I'm looking at a room full of boxes. So it's kind of hard not to think about, but I don't have to worry about packing things up and moving for at least a little while. So I won't bring that into this conversation anymore. I won't burden you with it anymore. So I got to think a little bit, and this is something that's been nice. We in relation to that moving thing, we got our kid set up on getting bus service here at the house that we're renting now, which means we get a few extra minutes in the morning where we don't have to drive him to school because we're actually living in a place that's zoned for the school that he's going to. So the bus comes and picks him up. So it's great because we save time on both ends of the day going to drop him off and pick him up. And so I've had a little more time to kind of sit and think a little bit more. And also gave me some time as we've kind of gotten back in the regular routine of things of my son being at school, my wife going to work, all those kinds of things, and me kind of having some time where there's not a lot of other distractions or sounds or people around. It's just me and quiet. A little more time for reflection. And, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you, just by nature of having access to technology that allows you to hear this podcast, you probably are, among the wealthiest, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's always these stats going around. The wealthiest 10%, we'll say, of people in the world, you probably are one of them, because a majority of people don't have access to the things that you or I have access to. And it's good to remind ourselves of that every once in a while. And you might be saying, Daniel, what does this have to do with being a pro musician? Well, we'll get there in a second. But I had one of those moments where I was just feeling grateful for what I had this last week or so after we got through moving, and we were in this wonderful rental house that it's fun or not fun, but it's funny how I can nitpick about, well, it's not this or that. It's like, well, also this is not a house that we built. This isn't the house we would have chosen to build. We're building that house, but we're living in this house now. And this house is a beautiful house. It's wonderful. It's amazing. I can't believe that we get to live here even for a few months. And so it's amazing. And so I started thinking, man, this is crazy. And then as we we went and checked in on our house being built and kind of walked through it. It's just so amazing and incredible to us. And some of you listening to this are probably, way better off than I am and we are. And you're like, well, that, if you saw my house, you'd think that, you'd be slumming it if you went to the house we're building. But for us, it's so incredible. And I started dealing with a sense of guilt almost a little bit that crept in. And I don't think it's a healthy thing, but I think there's a positive side of it. But the guilt was, man, we don't deserve to have something this nice. Why should we get to have something this nice when other people don't have something this nice? And I do want to make sure that it's clear, because this is something that's going to happen with you in your music career if you kind of keep following down this path that I've recommended to you, or even if you follow your own path and you just keep pressing forward in your music career. There's going to be a point when you probably get some kind of opportunity, or you get to find yourself in some situation and you say, man, there's not much difference between me and that other person. I have this opportunity and they don't. I feel bad about that. Or the opposite, which is you look at somebody else and you say, man, they're no different than me, but they got this opportunity. I didn't. Why didn't I get this opportunity? And you feel bad about that. That's just two sides of the same coin, which is there's some kind of idea that someone out there does deserve to have nice things, but it's definitely not us. Or we think we do deserve nice things and it's definitely not that other person. Either way, it's good to take stock in a positive way of what we do and don't have. And also what we've already been able to accomplish and how blessed we are with what we have. And the opportunities we've been given, the things we've been entrusted to maintain, and all of those things. So all of that to get to what I was thinking when I was walking through our new house being built. I'm like, man, my first instinct was feeling guilty that maybe I don't deserve something this nice, but I kind of quickly changed my mindset and said, you know what, that's actually not a healthy thought to say, man, I'm doing something wrong by having something nice. I shouldn't have something this nice. I don't deserve it. That's kind of a negative perception of myself. What I did say was, man, I recognize that I'm very fortunate to have what I have, and I'm going to do my best to take care of this and make wise decisions and be what I believe in the Bible. And so they talk about being a steward or someone who is entrusted to handle and be responsible for something. And so I definitely believe in that concept of what I've been given, I've been entrusted with, and I'm going to do my best to handle it the best way that I can. And I think that's a positive way of looking at it. And if you're a musician, you can say, look, I have first and foremost right now, I've been given a passion and probably a talent or a gift in music in some way, an ear for it, or I like playing it, or I have a passion for music, whatever it is, you've been given that, and you should respect that in a way that says, I want to do my best to nurture this in myself and respect my gifts. But also set goals for yourself. And that's the other piece of this. I actually started looking back when I was walking through the house. I'm like, man, how did I get here? I have nice things, and it's not about financial success or this or that. But I started saying, what were the steps that led me here? The same way I've done with my music career so many times. I wanted to look at other pieces of my life and say, wow, this seems baffling to me. This is so incredible. This is above what I deserve. How did I get here? How did this happen? And there's a lot that I'm sure goes into it, but I do want to point to something, and this is kind of the takeaway for today, for this episode. I want to point to something that I did probably, it's going to be over 10 years ago, probably closer to 11 or 12 years ago. And I 100% believe that this led me to where I'm at today, from a career and what I'm doing, even talking to you on this podcast and everything that I have to show kind of physical stuff, which isn't the most important thing in the world. I want to be clear, but it's part of something that's a great tool to have access to. And this is something I think that can help you in your music career immensely, because I've done it in my music career as well, and it's worked. And that's this. I don't know if I've ever actually shared the part of the story. I know that you've probably heard the story of when I got fired from my dream gig. And this is right before I asked my now wife to marry me. I was already planning on proposing, but the getting fired thing from my full-time job, my dream gig, threatened to throw a wrench in that. But right after I got fired, I was like, I got to find something to do. Also, I don't know if I want to get a full-time day job right now, a traditional job. What can I do? And so I know for sure I've never shared this with anybody. This is on like a podcast or anything, or education, because I keep forgetting about it. But I actually went and applied for a job and got offered the job and got hired to be the like on-site real estate agent for like a new housing development. So like, they're building houses in a neighborhood. They have the model home, and there's a real estate agent that works there and helps people build their houses. Well, I actually got hired to do that. Didn't have a real estate license, had no experience, but for some reason, the guy that interviewed me, saw something in me and offered me the job, and I accepted it. Now, side note, to kind of finish this part of the story up, I after getting the job, I had to get my real estate license. So I had to go do the classes to get a real estate license here in my state of Tennessee. And I had scheduled the classes, planned ahead, paid for it, all that stuff. And that's when I came down with the first instance, the first flare-up of that chronic illness that I have, ulcerative colitis. The first time it came up was right before that class was scheduled to start. I actually had to back out of the class because of that illness. And as a result, I had to tell the guy, I'm sorry, I can't take this job after all, because I can't take the class. And this is a chronic illness. At that point, I'd already been sick for like weeks. And I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to last. So I can't commit to a job, and had to back out of that. And that was all related to the stress around getting fired from my dream gig, by the way. That's how much of an effect that whole thing had on me. But in my one of my interviews with this company, and this guy had been very, very successful. He was a real estate developer. This was not the first time he had built these, multi-tens of millions of dollars development things. So this guy kind of knew what he was doing in this world. And he asked me something that I'd not heard before. But it's funny because as I kind of got more into like personal development and even like wealth building and business development, all the kind of things that I rely on now and what I do here with the podcast and teaching and also in my day job, he asked me a question and this question I've heard so many times since then. I realize it's very effective. He said, and this is the question he asked me was related to money, but it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about anything. But he said, do you have like a financial goal for yourself, like an income goal? Like, do you have an idea of how much money you want to make? And do you have a timeline on it? And have you written it down? That was the big thing. Have you written it down? And it's funny because like I said, this was like 11 or 12 years ago. I'm not proud of this, but I lied and I was like, yes. Cause I knew at that point I had this idea that like, he thinks that like, this is something I should be doing. And I didn't have the integrity to say no. I'm ashamed to tell you, but I said, yes, I have. He's like, well, what is it? And so I just like, honestly pulled some, not insane, but reasonably crazy large number out of, thin air and said, I want to make this amount of money by the time I'm 30. And he's like, okay. He's like, you have it written down? I'm like, yeah, I have it written down at home. I didn't. But what's funny is after I went home, I was like, man, if he ever calls me on that, I'm going to be in trouble if I don't do it. So I actually did go home that day after that interview, and I did write it down. And I wrote it on an index card, and I put it in my wallet. I carried it around with me for a really long time. I did at some point. I'll tell you when I took it out in a minute, but I wrote it down and had it with me. And he never did actually ask to see it, or ask me where it was, but I had it just in case. But I wrote it down, and I actually did look at it every time I opened my wallet, because back then people still carried cash around. I still had cash. Every time I opened my wallet, I would see that. I would say, I want to make this amount of money per year by the time I'm 30. And that would have been like 23, 24, maybe 22 even at this time, somewhere in that range. And I saw it every day. And what's really strange is I didn't really like put any more legs on that thought as far as like, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. If I don't do this, I'm going to fail. I've got to make this amount of money by the time I'm 30 or I'm going to fail. What's funny is it actually hit me a few years ago. I'm in my mid 30s now. A few years ago, I had forgotten that I'd even done that. And I looked, and I guess it had gotten folded up with like a bunch of other stuff in my wallet, because I used to carry way too much stuff in my wallet. It had gotten folded up with a bunch of other stuff, like my voter registration card, which I never use except for like, once every couple of years. And some other things like that like you never look at, but like it's good to have the one time you need it. I had that. It had been folded up with all that stuff. And I was kind of cleaning out my wallet, and I opened it up, and I found this piece of paper where I'd written, or this index card where I'd written down, I want to make X amount of money by the time I'm 30. And what's really crazy is I had done it. Now, I hadn't made it that goal exactly by the time I was 30. I think I hit that goal by the time I was maybe 32 or 33. And it didn't look at all like I didn't accomplish it the way that I thought I would. It was a very different path to get there than I envisioned it would be. But I had made it there. Made it there a couple of years late. But hey, if you had asked me when I pulled that number out of thin air, if someone had said, hey man, I'll tell you what, you're not going to make it by the time you're 30, you're going to make it by the time you're 32. Is that okay with you? I would have said, you're insane. There's no way I'm going to make it by the time I'm 32, but yes, I'll take it, because it would have been so crazy and amazing. So even it's the whole thing, like, you aim for they shoot for the stars, and if you miss, you still hit the moon or whatever. It's kind of like that. So I wrote it down and I did it. And all I can tell you is this: writing down your goals and even just saying them out loud to other people, without worrying about whether they're going to laugh at you or make fun of you. It does something. It changes something. And I'm not one of these like woo-woo, you put it out there in the universe and the universe will give it to you. That's not what I'm saying. And maybe I am saying that, I don't know. What I am saying is this. I do think there is something subconscious. When we write down a goal, it gets stored away in the back of our brains somewhere. And when we say something out loud, it does change something about us when we say it out loud to someone else and communicate that. And I feel like somewhere without us even realizing it impacts our actions. It impacts choices we make. Our subconscious, the backs of our brains, does a lot of things all the time that we don't realize we are doing, or that we're making decisions. We're making decisions that we don't realize we're making. We're saying things a certain way. We don't realize that we could have said them any other way, but our subconscious is transforming what we do all the time. And so at the core, at least writing something down changes your subconscious in small ways that I think can lead you with that whole like butterfly effect thing, down the road years later to accomplish something like that goal. That's at least that. There could be more to it. All I know is that I have met, especially in the last, 5 years or so, I've met, at least 10 people that I know for sure are like multimillionaires. And again, this is not about money. Many of us couldn't care less about making money. It's not about money. It's just about, a lot of people have large goals related to money. And so that's just one way, a tangible way of describing this. But all of them that I've had the chance to ask have written down their goals. A lot of, I don't know a single business owner of a successful business who every year doesn't write down the goals for the next year. And so if you're a musician and you want to become a professional musician, write down something that you'd like to accomplish in a certain time frame. And now don't make it insanely unrealistic. Like, I want to be touring arenas by, next spring. And you don't even play your instrument every day right now, or something like that. Like make it something that's aggressive, but you think, man, if I stretch, there's a chance I could hit this, and give yourself the time to actually accomplish it. But write it down. Write it down on a piece of paper, index card, fold it up, put it in your pocket, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it wherever you carry things. Keep it with you though. And just live your life, but remember as much as you can that you said that you were going to do that. Bonus points to you if you actually say it out loud to somebody else. It could be your spouse, your significant other. It could be a friend. It could be your dog. It could be anybody, but just say it out loud to someone and say, I would like to accomplish this by the time, by this time period, and just see what happens. That's pretty much it. I want to encourage you to write something down. Like I said, I don't know anybody who's done something really major that I know that's like really successful consistently who doesn't do this. And once I realized that I had written down that goal, like I said, when I was going through my wallet and found that slip of paper, that index card, saying that I wanted to do that, I threw it away because I was like, you know what? I've accomplished that goal. Let's move on. But then what I did was I wrote down a new goal, and I wrote that down, and I am working towards it. I don't think I should tell you quite yet. I don't want to tell you what it is yet. I think I'm gonna do it. I made this goal a few years ago, and I've made steps to get there, but I don't want to announce it publicly yet because it involves something, without getting too crazy, it involves something that I haven't announced yet here. And so I want to make sure that I don't ruin the surprise by announcing something just because I want to tell you what my goal is. But there is another goal that I have, and I think I can reach it. I'm on my way there. And when I do reach it, I will let you know. But in the meantime, write down a goal. That's your challenge today, this week, here in the Practical Poor Musician, is write down something you want to do, and also in what time frame you want to accomplish it. And then, do that. And by the way, speaking of writing things down, I want to do something really cool starting probably next week, next podcast. The lifeblood of this podcast is ratings and reviews on what's now Apple Podcasts, especially. And so it would mean the world to me, if you're listening at this point, especially, if you would go into Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever they call it right now, on your phone or on your computer, and leave an honest rating and review. Hey, I'd love it if you gave it 5 stars, but be honest. Write down what you think about it. And what I'm going to do is, starting next week, I'm going to pick one out. I'm going to read one on the air with each podcast. And so, if you do that, I might read yours on the air. And I think I might throw a contest in there at some point too. I haven't announced that yet because I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I will. And so we'll figure out some kind of cool contest to run here in the near future. And as it relates to leaving honest ratings and reviews. All right, this podcast has gone on long enough, I think, to make up for the fact that I didn't do a podcast last week. So thank you so much for joining me here on the Practical Pro Musician. As I said, my name is Daniel, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Write down a goal and see what happens. Put it in your pocket, carry it with you. All right, thanks for joining me this week. We'll talk again next week. Bye for now.